The gavel didn't just hit the wood, it sounded like a gunshot ending a life. In the heavy silence of the Manhattan courtroom, billionaire Adrian Cross adjusted his silk tie and shot a look of pure, unadulterated triumph at his wife. He had won. He kept the billions, the Hamptons estate, the private jet, and the company. She got nothing but the clothes on her back and a court order to vacate their penthouse by midnight. The press outside was ready to tear her apart as the gold digger who flew too close to the sun. But as Adrian turned to leave, laughing with his high-priced lawyers, he missed the one detail that would cost him everything. Isabella wasn't crying. She wasn't trembling. She was checking her watch. The war hadn't ended. It had just begun. The Honorable Judge Harold P. Calloway, a man whose face looked like it had been carved from granite and disappointment, shuffled the papers on his bench. The courtroom, usually a place of sterile legal proceedings, felt suffocating. It smelled of floor wax and the nervous sweat of paralegals. In the matter of Cross versus Cross, Judge Calloway's voice boomed, rattling the water pitchers on the defense table. This court finds in favor of the petitioner, Mr. Adrian Cross. The prenuptial agreement, dated August 14, 2018, is upheld in its entirety. The defendant, Mrs. Isabella Cross, is to receive no alimony, no claim to the Cross Dynamics shares, and must vacate the marital residence at 432 Park Avenue within 12 hours. The gallery, packed with reporters from the New York Times, TMZ, and the Wall Street Journal, erupted in a low buzz. Pens scratched furiously against notepads. This was the divorce of the decade. Adrian Cross, the golden boy of Silicon Valley, the man who revolutionized quantum computing, had just crushed his wife in court. Adrian stood up. He was 6'2", wearing a bespoke Brioni suit that cost more than most people's cars. He turned to his lead counsel, a shark named Richard Alexandra, from the firm Alexandra, Cooper and Moore. They shook hands firmly, the grip of men who owned the world. Then Adrian turned his eyes toward Isabella. She sat alone at the defense table. Her lawyer, a court-appointed exhausted man named Gary, was already packing his briefcase, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Isabella wore a simple black dress, high-necked, unbranded. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She didn't look at the judge. She looked straight at Adrian. "Tough break, Bella," Adrian whispered as he walked past her table, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "I told you. You were nothing before me, and you're nothing after me. You should have taken the settlement." The settlement had been a pittance. $500,000 in exchange for a lifetime non-disclosure agreement that would have silenced her forever. She had refused. She had chosen to fight for half of the company she claimed she helped build, and she had lost, spectacularly. "Enjoy the street," Adrian added, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. "I'll have security toss your things onto the sidewalk if you're not gone by 11. Isabella didn't blink. Her face was a porcelain mask. She didn't scream, she didn't throw water in his face, and she didn't beg. She simply picked up her cheap leather folder, placed it inside her tote bag, and stood up. "Goodbye, Adrian," she said. Her voice was steady, terrifyingly calm. It lacked the tremor of a defeated woman. Adrian frowned for a split second, unsettled by her lack of emotion. He expected tears. He fed on them. But before he could analyze it, his PR team swarmed him, guiding him toward the heavy oak doors where the cameras were waiting. Outside the courtroom, the hallway was a chaotic gauntlet. Flashes popped like strobe lights. "Mr. Cross! Mr. Cross! Is it true she tried to blackmail you? Adrian, how does it feel to protect your empire?" Adrian stopped in front of a bank of microphones, flashing his signature charismatic smile. the one that had graced the cover of Forbes 3 times. "Justice was served today," Adrian lied smoothly into the cameras. "It's a tragedy when love turns into greed. I wish Isabella the best in finding her own path, somewhere far away from my life's work. Cross Dynamics is about the future, and today we secured that future." He got into the waiting armored Cadillac Escalade, surrounded by bodyguards. As the heavy door slammed shut, shielding him from the noise, he pulled out his phone and dialed his COO, Nathan. "It's done," Adrian said, loosening his tie. "She's out. Total victory. The judge bought the incompetence narrative hook, line, and sinker." "Good," Nathan's voice crackled over the line. Because the board was getting nervous. If she had gotten access to the source code servers during discovery. "She didn't get access to anything," Adrian snapped, pouring himself a scotch from the car's crystal decanter. "She's a broke art history major, Nathan. She doesn't know a server from a toaster. The company is safe. The Project Orion launch is a go for next week." Adrian took a sip, the amber liquid burning pleasantly. He looked out the tinted window at the Manhattan skyline. He was untouchable. He had cut off the dead weight. But back on the courthouse steps, the scene was very different. Isabella emerged alone. There were no bodyguards to shield her. The paparazzi descended like vultures. "Isabella, did you marry him for the money? Isabella, are you homeless now? Hey, look over here. Give us a smile, sweetheart. You just lost $10 billion. One photographer, a man with a telephoto lens practically shoved into her face, jeered, "Back to the trailer park, huh?" Isabella stopped. The wind caught a stray lock of her hair. She looked directly into the lens of the camera broadcasting live to CNN. For a moment, the entire world saw her eyes. They weren't sad. They were cold. They were calculating. She reached into her bag, not for a tissue, but for a pair of oversized sunglasses. She slid them on, hiding her eyes, and walked through the crowd. She didn't push, but her stride was so purposeful that the sea of reporters parted instinctively. She walked to the curb. She didn't hail a taxi. She didn't call an Uber. A sleek black sedan pulled up. It wasn't a town car. It was a Mercedes-Maybach S-Class, the kind usually reserved for diplomats or royalty. The windows were tinted so dark they looked like oil. The crowd went quiet. The reporters lowered their cameras, confused. A uniformed driver stepped out, walked around, and opened the rear door for Isabella. "Destination, Mum?" the driver asked, loud enough for the nearest microphone to pick up. Isabella paused before getting in. She turned her head slightly back toward the courthouse, toward the ghost of her marriage. "The Teterboro Airport," she said clearly. "My jet is waiting." The door clicked shut. The reporters looked at each other, stunned. "Wait," one cameraman muttered. "I thought she was broke." Inside the Maybach, the silence was instant. Isabella exhaled, the first crack in her armor showing as her shoulders slumped. She pulled out a burner phone from a hidden pocket in her tote bag. She dialed a number that wasn't saved in the contacts. It rang once. "Status?" a distorted voice answered. "He won," Isabella said, watching the city blur past. "Just as we planned. He thinks I'm destitute. He thinks the prenup protects him." "And the asset?" "He has it," Isabella said, a dangerous smile finally forming on her lips. "He thinks he has the source code for Project Orion. He's going to launch it next week." "Perfect," the voice said. "Then he has exactly 7 days before the world finds out who really wrote the code." Isabella hung up and broke the SIM card in half. Adrian thought he had divorced a wife. He had no idea he had just declared war on the architect of his entire reality. The drive to Teterboro was smooth, a stark contrast to the jagged chaos of the last 6 months. Isabella leaned her head against the cool leather of the headrest. She closed her eyes, and the memories she had suppressed in the courtroom came flooding back. 5 years ago, a coffee shop in Palo Alto. Adrian was charming then, but desperate. He was a visionary with no vision, a charismatic salesman with a laptop full of broken code and a pitch deck full of lies. Isabella was the quiet one in the back of the computer lab, the scholarship student who worked 3 jobs and coded in her sleep. He had courted her, not with flowers, but with dreams. He promised they would change the world. He promised they were partners. She fixed his kernel. She rewrote his algorithms. She built the neural lace architecture that made cross dynamics worth billions. And then, the moment the IPO hit, he changed. The we became I. The partnership became a marriage, and the marriage became a cage. He isolated her. He convinced the board she was unstable. He gaslighted her until she almost believed it herself. But she had left herself a back door. The car slowed. They were at the private terminal. Waiting on the tarmac was not just a jet, but a Gulfstream G700, its white fuselage gleaming under the hangar lights. It didn't belong to Adrian. It didn't belong to Cross Dynamics. It belonged to Ethelgard, a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands that no forensic accountant on Adrian's payroll had ever found. As Isabella stepped onto the tarmac, a man in a sharp grey suit descended the jet's stairs. He was older, with silver hair and the posture of a retired general. This was Tobias, her godfather, and the only person in the world who knew the truth. "You look terrible," Tobias said gently, taking her bag. "I feel like I've been gutted," Isabella admitted, walking up the stairs. "Did you watch the verdict?" "The whole world watched," Tobias said, following her into the plush cabin. "Cross stock is up 8% in after-hours trading. The market loves a winner." Isabella sat in one of the cream-colored leather seats and accepted a glass of sparkling water. "Let them buy. It'll make the crash more spectacular." "Are you sure about this, Bella?" Tobias sat opposite her, his face serious. "Once we execute the dead man's switch, there is no going back. You will destroy him, yes. But you might destroy the company, the employees, thousands of jobs." Isabella looked out the window. "I built that company, Tobias. Every line of code in the Orion mainframe is mine. Adrian wants to launch it next week. Fine. But Orion requires a bio key to activate the final tier of intelligence. He thinks he bypassed it. He thinks his engineers cracked my encryption. And they didn't? They cracked the decoy," Isabella said. "I left a dummy partition. It looks real. It acts real. It even runs simulations. But the moment they try to scale it to the global network, the moment they try to connect it to the banking systems and the defense grids like Adrian promised the government." "What happens?" Tobias asked. Isabella took a sip of water. "It sings." "It sings?" "It reverts to its factory setting," she explained. "It deletes the proprietary kernel and replaces it with a broadcast loop of the very first video recording we ever made. The one where Adrian admits he can't code to save his life." Tobias let out a low whistle. "He'll be humiliated. The stock will tank." "It's not just humiliation," Isabella said, her voice hardening. "The contract he signed with the Department of Defense for Project Orion requires a security clearance level that is dependent on him being the sole creator of the IP. If it comes out that he stole it, that he defrauded the US government—" "Prison," Tobias finished. "Federal prison." "Federal prison," she echoed. "For a very long time." The pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Ms. Alexandra, we are cleared for takeoff to Zurich." Isabella nodded. She was going back to her maiden name. Alexandra. Zurich? Tobias asked. I thought we were going to London. Change of plans, Isabella said, pulling a tablet from her bag. I need to visit a bank vault in the Bahnhofstrasse. There's a physical ledger there. The original handwritten notes from 2017. Adrian destroyed the digital copies, but he forgot I'm old-fashioned. As the jet roared down the runway, leaving New York and Adrian Cross behind, Isabella opened her laptop. She logged into a secure server. On the screen, a countdown clock was ticking. -6 days, 14 hours, 22 minutes until launch. In his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Adrian Cross was currently popping a bottle of Dom Perignon, surrounded by sycophants, toasting to his freedom. He had no idea that the woman he had just discarded was currently 30,000 feet above him, holding the detonator to his entire life. One more thing, Isabella said, typing a command into the terminal. He froze my credit cards, right? All of them, Tobias confirmed. You technically have $0 in the US banking system. Good thing I don't bank in the US. She hit enter. I just bought 5% of his competitor's stock using the offshore trust, and I want to send a little gift to his launch party next week. A gift? A wreath, Isabella said coldly. Lilies. The kind you send to a funeral. 3 days after the verdict, the atmosphere inside the Cross Dynamics headquarters in Hudson Yards was electric, bordering on hysterical. The offices were a sprawling glass and steel testament to Adrian's ego, featuring floating staircases, sleeping pods, and a view that dominated the Manhattan skyline. In the center of the frantic activity was the war room, a secure, soundproofed glass box where the upper echelon of the company was preparing for the Project Orion launch. Adrian Cross paced the length of the room, his shoes clicking rhythmically on the polished concrete floor. He was shouting into a headset. I don't care about the beta variants, General. The latency is 0. 0. We are talking about real-time global encryption cracking. Yes, Tuesday. The President will be there. You bring the checkbook, I bring the future. He ripped the headset off and tossed it onto the mahogany conference table. The DOD is twitchy, Adrian muttered to Nathan, his COO. They're hearing rumors. Rumors? Nathan asked, looking up from a tablet that was displaying a sea of green stock tickers. Rumors that the source code is unstable without Isabella. Adrian spat the name out like a curse word. They think she was the magic. I need to prove she was just the assistant. Well, Nathan hesitated, glancing at the man hunched over a bank of monitors in the corner. Brody is having issues. Brody was the new lead architect. He was 24, brilliant, arrogant, and completely terrified. He had been hired to replace Isabella 3 months ago, poached from Google with a salary that could buy a small island. Right now he was sweating through his hoodie. Brody, Adrian barked. Report! Brody jumped. Mr. Cross. Sir, we're running the Level 5 simulations. The interface is beautiful. The UI is slick. But what? Adrian walked over, looming over the young engineer. There's a ghost in the shell, sir, Brody whispered, pointing at a stream of cascading code on his screen. Every time we try to access the deep learning core, the part of Orion that actually thinks, it hits a wall, a logic loop. It asks for a key. We have the key, Adrian snapped. It's the encryption sequence I gave you. I know, Brody stammered. And it works for the surface stuff. But the core, it rejects the sequence. It's looking for a biometric signature, a specific keystroke rhythm. It's like the code has a heartbeat, and it doesn't recognize ours. Adrian felt a cold prickle of dread at the base of his neck. A heartbeat. That was something Isabella used to say. Code isn't math, Adrian. It's poetry. It has a pulse. Bypass it, Adrian ordered. I tried, Brody said. "If I force it, the system destabilizes. The cooling units on the server farm in Nevada spike to critical temperatures. If we launch on Tuesday and the government tries to push a petabyte of data through this, we could melt the hardware." Adrian grabbed Brody's chair and spun it around. "Listen to me. You overpaid, keyboard warrior. There is no melting. There is no ghost. There is only a launch on Tuesday that validates my $10 billion valuation. You have 48 hours to patch it. Write a subroutine, fake the handshake, I don't care. Just make it work." "But if you don't," Adrian leaned in, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper, "I will ensure you never work in this industry again. I'll sue you for negligence so hard your grandchildren will be born in debt." Brody swallowed hard and turned back to his screen, typing furiously. Adrian straightened his suit jacket, composing himself. He couldn't show fear. The sharks were watching. Just then, the glass doors of the war room slid open. An assistant, a young woman named Bernice, walked in holding a large, ominous arrangement of flowers. "Mr. Cross," she squeaked. "Delivery for you." "I told you, no interruptions," Nathan barked. It didn't have a return address, sir. Security scanned it. It's clean." "But the card—" Adrian looked at the flowers. They were lilies. White lilies. The kind used exclusively for funerals. A heavy, cloying scent filled the sterile room. He snatched the card from the arrangement. It was a heavy cream stock, embossed. He opened it. There was no signature. Just 3 words written in elegant cursive calligraphy. "Tick-tock, Adrian." Adrian stared at the card. His hand trembled just once. He crushed the card in his fist. "Throw this out," he yelled, startling Bernice, "and fire the security guard who let this up here. Someone is playing games." "Is it her?" Nathan asked quietly as the assistant scurried away with the wreath. "She's in a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens crying over her cat," Adrian lied, trying to convince himself. "She doesn't have the resources for this. It's a competitor. Probably Starkweather or Musk trying to rattle me." But as he looked back at the screen where Brody was struggling with the code, Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that the ghost in the machine was laughing at him. He pulled out his phone and walked to the window. He dialed a number. "Get me P.I. Miller. I want surveillance on Isabella. I want to know what she's eating, who she's talking to, and where she sleeps. Now." 4,000 miles away, the air was crisp and smelled of snow and money. Isabella walked down the Bahnhofstrasse in Zurich, Switzerland. The street was lined with the most expensive shops in the world, Cartier, Prada, Patek Philippe. But Isabella wasn't shopping. She wore a trench coat that cost more than Adrian's car, purchased an hour ago, and oversized sunglasses. She looked like every other heiress in the city, which was exactly the point. In Zurich, money was the best camouflage. She turned into a narrow side street and stopped in front of a heavy iron door with a modest brass plaque, Banque Privée de Genève. She pressed the buzzer. A camera swiveled to look at her. "Madame?" a voice crackled. "Account number 77, Alpha Zero, authorization name, Mnemosyne," Isabella said clearly. The lock buzzed. Inside, the bank was silent as a tomb. The floors were marble. The walls were lined with dark wood. A man in a tailcoat approached her. "Frau Alexandra," he bowed slightly. "We have been expecting you. Herr Tobias called ahead." "I need access to box 404, she said. "Of course, if you will follow me." They descended into the vault. The air grew cooler. The steel walls were 3 feet thick. This was where dictators and dynasties hid their secrets. Isabella didn't have gold bars or diamonds. She had something far more valuable. The clerk unlocked the box, slid it out, and placed it on a wooden table in a private viewing room. He bowed and left her alone. Isabella opened the box. Inside lay a single, leather-bound notebook. It was tattered, coffee-stained, and filled with her handwriting. She ran her fingers over the cover. The red ledger. Years ago, when she first started coding the neural architecture for Orion, she didn't trust the cloud. She didn't trust servers. So, she wrote the core logic by hand first. Every algorithm, every backdoor, every fail-safe. It was the only physical proof that she was the author, not Adrian. During the divorce, Adrian's lawyers had subpoenaed every hard drive and cloud account she owned. They destroyed her digital footprint. They claimed she was just a muse, a graphic designer who made things look pretty while Adrian did the heavy lifting. But they didn't know about the notebook. She opened it to the last page. There, written in red ink, was a string of alphanumeric characters. Override sequence. Orion Omega Fall. She took a picture of the page with her burner phone. Then she placed the notebook back in the box. It was safer here than with her. Her phone vibrated. She looked at the screen. It was a blocked number. She knew who it was. The wreath had been delivered 2 hours ago, New York time. He would be spiraling by now. She answered, saying nothing. Isabella. Adrian's voice was tight, controlled, but she could hear the strain. Hello, Adrian, she said pleasantly. How are things in the war room? I hear lilies are in season. Cut the crap, he hissed. What did you do to the code? I didn't do anything, she replied, examining her fingernails. I simply left, and it seems the code misses its mother. Fix it, he commanded. I know you built a back door. Give me the key and I'll revisit the settlement. Isabella laughed. It was a genuine, dark laugh. Revisit the settlement? You mean the one where you left me with nothing? I'll give you 5 million, Adrian said quickly. Cash. Wire transfer right now. Just give me the patch for the bio key. 5 million? Isabella mocked. Cross Dynamics is valued at 40 billion pending the launch. You're offering me crumbs, Adrian. Again. 10 million, he countered, and I won't press charges for corporate sabotage. Sabotage implies I broke something, Isabella said, her voice dropping to a steely chill. I didn't break it, Adrian. It's working exactly as designed. It's waiting for the creator. And since you swore under oath in federal court that you were the creator, you should be able to fix it, right? Silence on the other end. She could hear him breathing. You committed perjury, Adrian, she continued. You lied to the court, you lied to the shareholders, and most importantly, you lied to the Department of Defense. Do you know what the penalty is for defrauding the military with a faulty security system? You can't prove anything, Adrian snarled. I scrubbed your drives. You have nothing. I'm in Zurich, Adrian, she whispered. The line went dead silent. Why are you in Zurich? He asked, his voice trembling for the first time. Because the Swiss appreciate privacy, she said. And they appreciate paper trails, specifically the handwritten ledger from 2017 that outlines the entire Orion architecture. The one you forgot I kept in my grandmother's safety deposit box before I moved it here. That book doesn't exist, Adrian said, panic rising. It does, and I just authenticated it with a notary. If that launch happens on Tuesday, and Orion fails, or worse, if it sings, I release the ledger to the press, and to the FBI. What do you want? Adrian screamed. She could hear the desperation now. Name your price. I don't want your money, Adrian, Isabella said, standing up and buttoning her trench coat. I want your reputation. I want the world to know you're a fraud. I want to watch the boy genius crumble. I will find you, Adrian threatened. I have people. You have no one, she cut him off. You have employees who fear you and lawyers who bill you. I have the truth." She hung up. Isabella walked out of the bank and into the blinding white sunlight. She felt lighter. But she knew the danger had just spiked. Adrian was a narcissist, and a narcissist cornered was a dangerous animal. He wouldn't just try to fix the code now. He would try to eliminate the obstacle. As she turned the corner, a black van with tinted windows slowly rolled past her. It didn't stop, but it slowed down. Isabella didn't look at it. She kept walking, her heart hammering against her ribs. She tapped her earpiece. "Tobias?" "I see them." Tobias's voice came through, calm and reassuring. "Two men. Ex-military contractors. Adrian hired cleaners. Do not go back to the hotel." "Where do I go?" "Train station," Tobias directed. "The crowds are your friend. We need to get you to the safe house in the Alps. If they catch you before Tuesday, they won't just ask for the password." Isabella merged into a group of tourists. The game of cat and mouse had officially moved from the digital world to the physical one, and Adrian Cross was playing for keeps. The Zurich Hauptbahnhof was a cavernous hive of activity, echoing with the announcements of trains departing for Milan, Paris, and Munich. Isabella moved through the throngs of commuters, her head down, her heart beating a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Platform 9, Tobias's voice crackled in her ear. "The intercity to Zermatt leaves in 4 minutes. Get on the third car. It's the busiest." Isabella didn't look back. She knew the black van had been abandoned for a foot pursuit. Adrian's cleaners, men who solved problems that lawyers couldn't, were somewhere in this crowd, scanning faces, looking for a woman in a beige trench coat. She shed the coat near a trash bin, revealing a dark navy parka underneath, and pulled a beanie low over her forehead. She boarded the train just as the whistle blew. The doors hissed shut, sealing her in. She found a seat near a window, sandwiched between a group of boisterous skiers and a businessman sleeping with his mouth open. As the train lurched forward, sliding out of the station, she dared a glance at the platform. 2 men in dark jackets were sprinting alongside the train. One of them locked eyes with her through the glass. He didn't yell. He didn't wave. He just stopped, pulled out a phone, and made a call. "They saw me," Isabella whispered into her collar microphone. "I know," Tobias said, his voice grim. "They can't stop the train, but they'll be waiting at the next major stop in Visp. You're not going to Visp." "Where am I going?" "There's a maintenance stop in 20 miles. It's not a passenger station. The train slows down to switch tracks for the cargo lines. You have about 30 seconds to jump." "Jump?" Isabella hissed, keeping her voice low. "Are you insane? The snow is deep there. It'll cushion the fall. If you stay on that train to Visp, you're dead, Bella. Adrian has authorized a black extraction. They'll drug you, drag you onto a private plane, and you'll wake up in a black site in Yemen with no memory of your name." Isabella gripped her bag. Inside was the laptop that controlled the back end of Orion. It was the only weapon she had. The train began to decelerate. The announcement system chimed in German, something about a signal delay. "Now," Tobias commanded. "Rear door. Emergency release." Isabella moved. She pushed past the sleeping businessman and hurried to the vestibule at the end of the car. Through the window, she saw nothing but a blur of white pine trees and grey sky. The train slowed to a crawl, the wheels screeching. She grabbed the red handle. Emergency release. She yanked it. The door hissed open, and a blast of freezing alpine air hit her like a physical blow. The ground was moving past at maybe 15 miles per hour. "Go!" Isabella jumped. She hit the snowbank hard, tumbling, the world spinning in a vortex of white powder and grey sky. She rolled, gasping as the cold bit into her lungs, and came to a stop at the base of a pine tree. The train's tail lights disappeared around the bend. Silence rushed back in, heavy and absolute. "Bella? I'm here," she groaned, checking her limbs. Nothing broken. Cold, but alive. "Look to your left. Service road." Isabella waded through the waist-deep snow. 100 yards away, an old, battered Land Rover sat idling, exhaust puffing into the frigid air. Tobias was behind the wheel. He looked nothing like the refined butler he played in New York. He was wearing tactical gear, his eyes scanning the perimeter. "Get in," he said, as she scrambled into the passenger seat. "We have a 2-hour drive up the mountain. The safe house is off the grid. No cell service, no internet, except for the satellite uplink I installed." As they navigated the treacherous, winding roads up into the Alps, Isabella pulled out her laptop. She checked the system logs. "They're trying to brute force the password," she said, watching the lines of red code scroll by. "Brody is desperate. He's running a dictionary attack on the kernel." "Will he get in?" Tobias asked, navigating a hairpin turn. "No, but he might trigger the failsafe early." Isabella typed a command. "I'm locking them out completely until the launch sequence initiates. Let them sweat for the next 24 hours. Back in New York, it was 3 a.m. Adrian Cross hadn't slept. He was in his office, staring at a wall of monitors. His phone rang. It was the leader of the extraction team. "We lost her." Adrian threw his coffee mug against the wall. It shattered, spraying dark liquid over his awards cabinet. "How do you lose a woman on a train?" he screamed. "She jumped. We found footprints leading to a vehicle extraction. It was planned, sir. She has support. Professional support." Adrian ran a hand through his hair. He was unraveling. The narrative he had sold the world, that Isabella was a helpless, incompetent leech, was falling apart. She was outmaneuvering him at every turn. "Find her," Adrian whispered. "I don't care what it costs. Burn the Alps down if you have to." Tuesday, the launch. The Lincoln Center had been transformed into a temple of technology. Blue lasers sliced through the air, projecting the logo of Cross Dynamics, a stylized atom, onto the clouds above Manhattan. The red carpet was swarming with the elite, tech moguls, Hollywood A-listers, senators, and, seated front and center, the Secretary of Defense. Adrian Cross stood backstage, checking his reflection in the mirror. He looked perfect. The makeup artist had covered the dark circles under his eyes. His suit was sharp enough to cut glass, but his hands were shaking so badly he had to clasp them behind his back. "Status!" he barked into his lapel mic. We think we have a bypass," Brody's voice came through, sounding like he was on the verge of a stroke. "We isolated the bio-key partition. We're going to route the live demo through a simulator. It won't be the real AI, but the audience won't know the difference." "And the government contract?" Adrian hissed. "They want to see the real-time decryption." "We'll fake it," Brody said. "We preloaded the decryption keys for the demo. It'll look instant. We just need to survive the hour, sir. Then we can rebuild the code from scratch later." It was a house of cards built on a foundation of dynamite, but it was the only play they had. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed, shaking the auditorium, "please welcome the visionary, the architect of tomorrow, Adrian Cross." The music swelled. Hans Zimmer, commissioned specifically for this moment. Adrian walked out onto the stage. The applause was deafening. He smiled, that billion-dollar smile, and waved. "Thank you," he said, his voice smooth, commanding the room. "Tonight we don't just step into the future, we build it." He launched into his speech. It was mesmerizing. He spoke of safety, of a world without cybercrime, of a defense network so advanced it could stop wars before they began. He was selling safety to a terrified world. In the Swiss Alps, inside a cabin buried under 5 feet of snow, Isabella and Tobias sat in front of a bank of monitors. They were watching the live stream. "He's good," Tobias admitted. "I almost believe him." "He believes himself," Isabella said. "That's why he's dangerous." On the screen, Adrian walked over to a massive obsidian pillar in the center of the stage. This was the interface for Orion. "And now," Adrian said, raising his hand, "I'm going to show you the impossible. I'm going to ask Orion to decrypt the 512-bit security key of a remote server in under 3 seconds, a task that would take a supercomputer 10,000 years. He placed his hand on the scanner. "Orion," Adrian commanded. "Awake." The stage lights dimmed. The pillar pulsed with blue light. In the Alps, Isabella's fingers hovered over her keyboard. "Wait for it," she whispered. "Wait for the handshake." On the stage, the screen behind Adrian lit up. Lines of code began to scroll. The crowd gasped in awe. "Processing!" The synthesized voice of the AI boomed. "Bypass active," Brody whispered into Adrian's ear. "We're good. It's running the simulation." Adrian relaxed. He felt a rush of euphoria. He had done it. He had pulled off the greatest con in history. "Decrypting," the AI said. Then Isabella hit Enter. The command shot through the satellite uplink, bounced off a server in Singapore, tunneled through the firewall in New York, and slammed into the Orion mainframe. Override command. Truth protocol initiated. On the giant screen at Lincoln Center, the blue code turned red. Adrian's smile faltered. "Orion?" The AI's voice changed. It wasn't the smooth female alto anymore. It was mechanical, jarring. "Error, unauthorized user. Biometric mismatch. Creator not detected." The crowd murmured. Adrian laughed nervously. "Ah, the security is so tight, it doesn't even recognize me today. Let me try again." He pressed his hand harder on the scanner. "Orion. Override. Authorization. Cross Alpha 1. Access denied." The voice boomed, louder this time. "System integrity compromised. Reverting to original source material." "Cut the feed," Adrian hissed into his mic. "Cut the video." "I can't," Brody screamed in his ear. "I'm locked out. It's taking over the AV system." Suddenly, the massive screen behind Adrian flickered. The sleek graphics of the Cross Dynamics logo disappeared. In their place, a grainy, shaky video appeared. It was a recording from a webcam. Dated 5 years ago. The audience went dead silent. On the screen, a younger Adrian was sitting on a messy couch, holding a beer. He looked drunk. He was talking to someone off camera. "Bella, I don't get it." The video Adrian slurred. "I don't understand the loop. I can't write this stuff. It's too hard. Why can't I just be the face? You write it. I sell it. No one needs to know." A woman's voice, Isabella's voice, came from behind the camera. "Adrian, if we do this, we do it together. But you have to learn the architecture." "I don't want to learn," Video Adrian shouted, throwing a pillow. "I'm not a nerd like you. I'm a star. I'm going to be rich, and you're going to be the little mouse behind the curtain making me look good. That's the deal." The audience at Lincoln Center was frozen. The Secretary of Defense stood up, his face purple. On stage, the real Adrian was pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. This is a deep fake. This is AI manipulation. Turn it off." But the video continued. "So you admit it?" Isabella's voice asked on the recording. "You admit you didn't write the code for Orion?" "I didn't write a single line." Video Adrian laughed, raising his beer. "And I never will. That's what I have you for, babe. My little secret weapon. Now come here and stop working." The video froze on Adrian's smug, drunken face. Then, text appeared over the image in bold red letters. Orion source code. Author, Isabella Alexandra. Current user. Fraud detected. System lockdown. The lights in the auditorium went out completely. The only light came from the red warning on the screen. Pandemonium broke out. Reporters were shouting. Cameras were flashing blindly. The Secretary of Defense was surrounded by Secret Service agents who were aggressively moving him toward the exit. Adrian stood alone in the dark, the roar of his collapsing empire deafening him. In the Swiss Alps, Isabella leaned back in her chair. She didn't smile, she didn't cheer. She just watched the chaos unfold with cold satisfaction. "It's done," Tobias said softly. "Not yet," Isabella replied, closing her laptop. "Now comes the hard part. He has nothing left to lose, and a man with nothing to lose is capable of anything." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the snowstorm. "Pack the bags, Tobias. They'll track the signal. We have to move." The hours following the Red Tuesday launch were a blur of catastrophic velocity. Cross-dynamic stock didn't just fall, it evaporated. In after-hours trading, the valuation dropped from 40 billion to junk status. The board of directors held an emergency meeting via Zoom, screaming over one another. But Adrian wasn't there to hear it. He was in his penthouse, the lights off, watching the police sirens flicker against the ceiling like disco lights from hell. His phone was buzzing incessantly. The Department of Justice, the SEC, his lawyers, his friends who were now deleting his number. He picked up a glass of scotch, his hand trembling so violently the liquid splashed onto his ruined tuxedo. He had lost. It was total, absolute annihilation. But beneath the fear, a cold rage was solidifying. He wouldn't go to prison. He was Adrian Cross. He had offshore accounts. He had a helicopter on the roof. He moved to his wall safe behind a modernist painting. He spun the dial. Empty. Adrian stared into the dark void of the steel box. The passports. The diamonds. The emergency drive with the crypto keys. Gone. In their place was a single, folded piece of paper. He snatched it up, unfolding it with frantic fingers. It was a receipt. A donation receipt. "Thank you for your generous donation of $15,000, all bearer bonds and loose diamonds, to the Women in Tech Scholarship Fund. Signed, the board." And at the bottom, a sticky note. "I told you, Adrian. I helped you build this life. I can help you dismantle it. Isabella!" he screamed, the sound tearing from his throat, raw and primal. The elevator chimed. It wasn't the police. Not yet. The doors slid open. Adrian spun around, grabbing a heavy brass statue from the table, ready to swing. But it wasn't the FBI. It was Nathan, his COO, looking pale and disheveled. "The helicopter pilot is gone, Adrian," Nathan said, his voice hollow. "He quit, said his check bounced." "Fly it yourself," Adrian roared. "Get me to Teterboro." "It's over," Nathan said, tossing his badge onto the floor. "The feds are in the lobby. They have a warrant for wire fraud, embezzlement, and perjury. And they have the ledger." Adrian froze. "The ledger?" "Isabella sent it to the New York Times an hour ago. They just published the scans. Handwriting analysis confirmed it. She wrote Orion. You stole it. It's trending worldwide." Adrian dropped the statue. It clattered loudly on the marble. "She can't do this to me," he whispered, pacing frantically. "I am the face. I am the brand." "You're a liability," Nathan said, backing away toward the elevator. "I just cut a deal, Adrian. I gave them the emails where you ordered the cover-up. I'm not going to jail for you." "Traitor!" Adrian lunged, but the elevator doors closed just in time. Alone again. Trapped in his glass castle. The phone on his desk rang. Not his cell. The landline. The one line he couldn't block. He stared at it. He knew who it was. He picked it up slowly. "Are you watching the news, Adrian?" Isabella's voice was clear, calm, and terrifyingly close. "You ruined me," he wept, the fight finally draining out of him. "Why? You could have just taken the money." "It was never about the money," Isabella said. "It was about the credit. It was about the fact that you looked me in the eye and told me I was nothing. You told the world I was a gold digger." "I can fix it," Adrian pleaded. "I'll make a statement. I'll say we were partners. Just tell them to stop. Tell the FBI it was a misunderstanding." "I can't do that, Adrian," she said, "because I'm not your partner anymore. I'm your landlord." "What?" "Cross Dynamics filed for bankruptcy protection 20 minutes ago," Isabella explained. "The creditors panicked. They auctioned off the debt. And guess who bought it?" Adrian fell to his knees. "No. I own the building you're standing in. I own the chair you're sitting on. And I own the name Cross Dynamics. My first act as majority owner will be to rebrand. I'm thinking, Alexandra Systems has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" A pounding started on the heavy oak doors of the penthouse. "FBI, open up!" "They're here, Adrian," Isabella said softly. "Fix your tie. You always wanted to be famous. You're about to be on every channel in the world." "Isabella, please. Goodbye, Adrian." The line went dead. The doors burst open. Agents in windbreakers swarmed the room. Flashlights blinded him. Adrian Cross, the man who wanted to be a god, was shoved face first onto the Persian rug he no longer owned, handcuffs clicking shut around his wrists. 6 months later, the courtroom was different this time. It wasn't the high-pressure cauldron of Manhattan. It was a federal sentencing hearing. Adrian Cross, looking gaunt and wearing an orange jumpsuit, stood before the judge. He had pleaded guilty to 17 counts of fraud. His high-priced lawyers had abandoned him when the money ran out. He was represented by a public defender. "Mr. Cross," the judge said, peering over his glasses, "your actions have defrauded investors of billions and compromised national security. You are sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole." The gavel banged. Adrian didn't look back at the gallery. There was no one there for him anyway. Thousands of miles away, on the terrace of a villa overlooking Lake Como, Isabella watched the verdict on a tablet. She took a sip of espresso. The air smelled of jasmine and pine. "Justice?" Tobias asked, setting a plate of pastries on the table. "Closure," Isabella corrected. She closed the tablet cover, the black screen reflecting her face. She looked younger, lighter. The weight of the secret was gone. "The new launch is scheduled for tomorrow," Tobias noted. "Alexandra Systems. The stock is already up 200% on the rumors of the new Orion patch." "Let it rise," Isabella said, standing up and walking to the railing. Below, the blue water of the lake sparkled. "I'm not the CEO, remember? I appointed a board. I'm just the founder." "And what will the founder do now?" Isabella smiled. It was the first time in years her smile reached her eyes. "I'm going to paint," she said. "And maybe I'll learn to fly that jet myself." She turned away from the view, walking back into the house that was bought with her own money, earned by her own mind. She had walked through the fire and come out not just unburnt, but forged into steel. She had lost the divorce case, but she had won her life. And that is the story of how one underestimated woman took down a billion-dollar empire without throwing a single punch. It's a reminder that true power isn't about how loud you can shout, but about what you know and the receipts you keep. Adrian Cross thought he could erase Isabella, but he forgot the golden rule of the digital age. You can delete a file, but you can never delete the truth. What would you have done if you were Isabella? Would you have taken the settlement, or would you have burned it all down for justice? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes revenge and instant karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.